This coming Tuesday marks the 60th anniversary of the Munich air disaster, which captured world attention in February 1958.
Here is the news. So far, we know there are 23 survivors after Manchester United's air crash at Munich this afternoon. The aircraft was a twin-engined Elizabethan on charter from BEA. It was returning from Belgrade, where Manchester United had entered the semi-final of the European Cup. It had reached Munich and was just taking off for home in poor weather when the crash came at 3 o'clock.
Can you tell me what happened? Do you remember what happened when the plane was taking off?
Well, I just remember the plane starting to surge to rise, you know.
This is Harry Gregg, Northern Ireland and Manchester United goalkeeper.
And it didn't get up, so I braced myself. I put my feet against the chair in front.
Yes.
And there was a terrible impact. Well, the seat in front came towards me. I forced it away with my feet.
Yes.
And everything came to a stop.
Yes.
Luggage came down around me, and everything came in my way, you know.
Yes.
I forced the chair away, and my safety strap had broken.
Yes.
So I don't really undo it. And I crawled out through a hole in the side of the plane.
Yes. The plane was in pieces by this time.
Yes, the tail had gone into a farmhouse about 50 yards away.
And then what happened? Did help come?
Yes, quite a few people come on the scene, and the fire brigade came on the scene and put out the fire on the main body, but it took them quite a time controlling it in the farmhouse.
Yes, quite, yes. And now they brought you to this hotel. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay here for a day or two, or are you going home straight away?
Well, I hope to go home as soon as possible, maybe tomorrow morning if it's possible, after I see the boys that are in the hospital.
What Harry Gregg didn't tell on that occasion was his own role that afternoon.
I'd won a lot of money the night before playing poker in the hotel, in the poker school, and I decided I would have wind up. They wouldn't get their money back.
Harry Gregg remembering the disaster 40 years after the event.
When we landed, I'd slept from Belgrade to Munich. Woke up on the sign for the belts, or the call for the belts. Landed in, bought presents for wives, landladies, mothers, families. Back on the aircraft again. Started to roll. Down the runway, nothing untoward. A slight covering of snow, footprints in the snow. And I'm just watching out the window. Directly, the wheels are almost directly in front of me with the telescopic rods that carry them. Watch a slight bow wave of snow. Watch the things extend. We're up. And all of a sudden, the wheels locked and unlocked, locked and unlocked, and the plane moved about a bit in the runway. On this occasion, one of the stewardesses came on and said, "Sorry for the technical hitch, we will go back to the beginning and do it again," which we did. And there was no terrible apprehension on the aircraft. None whatsoever. Only one thing. On the first attempt, there was a bang behind me, and I turned quickly. And out of the galley came Tom Cable, the steward, in his white jacket. And behind Frank Taylor was sitting a lady and a child in a three-seater. And this poor guy threw himself into the seat and strapped himself in. And I thought, God, that poor fellow's frightened. We went back to the beginning and we did it again. And he stayed in that seat. We went down the runway, same distance thereabouts, and there was that little bit more of a bow wave of snow. And the anchors went on again and she moved about. This time one of the captains, I don't know which one, came on and apologised again for a technical hitch and said we would return to the terminal and we would disembark. We all made our way across to the terminal, and the more experienced lads were saying we'll be back by the Hook of Holland across the country and we'll have a few beers and have a laugh. And within less than, I couldn't tell you, time doesn't come into it after this. I don't care what the record says. 3, 4, 5 minutes. It was a call which surprised everybody with the United Party aboard the plane.
The weather was worsening, snow had fallen, they were now taking off for the third time.
As we started down the runway, the plane was stopped again, and there was a head count, and Alf Clark had been left behind. He was making a call. Everybody got on board and back to the front, and I could look diagonally across the aircraft and see at the window seat was Roger Byrne, the captain. In the centre seat was little Johnny Berry, and in the aisle seat was Liam Whelan, and across the aisle was Albert Scanlon on the other card school. And I looked at Roger, and I was worried. And Roger was more worried, and human nature is, I think, he get braver. And I thought, he's more worried than I am. And just with that, someone coughed and giggled, and little Johnny Berry said, "It's no laughing matter, we're all going to get friggin' killed here." And Liam Whelan turned to Albert Scanlon and said, "There's no dream, no fascination. Well, I'm ready."
But I was in the RAF in the war.
Frank Taylor was a journalist travelling with the team.
I always take the attitude that when you get on an aircraft, you're in the hands of the pilot and in the hands of God. Therefore, I had no worry at all as I got on the aircraft. I thought, these boys know what they're doing, fasten myself in, no problem. The only thing that I was interested in is when the wheels went up. We pulled up twice along the runway, and it stays in my mind because there was a red building. And as we took off the third time, as we went past the red building, I shouted forward, "Can you see if the wheels have gone up, son?" And there was no reply, so I turned in my seat to look forward, and I could just see what appeared to be the perimeter fence rushing towards us.
And we started off down the runway, and I watched the wheels intently, and I watched places we hadn't been before, and I watched the rods extend, lift, and I watched us take off. And then there was the most unmerciful crashing, and nobody can describe it. And there was no human emotions, and there was no cries from anyone at all. I think it must have been just total shock, thinking it never happens to me. And you get banged about a bit, and terrible rending and tearing, and things happen.
And I thought, good God, we're going to crash. That was the only freezing moment of fear. I turned to look, and Harry was on the other side of the plane to me, and I could see the landing lights flashing past. And then I passed out. It was like a green wave coming before me. And there was crazy little flashes. I have an impression the wheel came through the fuselage, and the bulkhead caved in. But really, I've always had the greatest admiration for Harry and people like that who were conscious.
I thought, as it happened in slow motion, United had signed me 3 months before that. I've done well for the first time in my life. I won't see my wife and my little girl again. I won't see my family, and I can't speak German. And there was no terrible fear. It happened. I thought I was dead because I couldn't relate to darkness and daylight. There was sparks and burning. And off to my right, I saw some light, and I could feel the blood run down my face, and I thought, I'm not dead. But why am I in the dark? And I crawled towards the light and looked out of the hole, and lying on the ground below me was Bert Wally, and he didn't have a mark on him. And Bert, the youth team coach, so tragic, but he had brought most of those boys through from childhood, and here he was, he'd been taken as a bonus by the boss. There he was lying unmarked in the snow. I turned on my backside and I tried to make the hole bigger, and I dropped down, and I thought, geez, I'm the only one alive. And then in the distance I could see 5 people running through the snow. 2 stewardesses, a radio operator called Rogers, Peter Howard and Ted Elyard. And one of them shouted, "Run." And just with that, a brave man, and I repeat, a brave man in every sense, came round the nose of the aircraft, Jim Thane, the pilot, with a small fire extinguisher. And he saw me, and his words were, "Run, you stupid bastard, it's going to explode." And he turned and went back the way he came. Now, he was a guy, I was a professional footballer at the height of my career. He was a professional flyer. I was in ignorance of what might happen. That guy wasn't. And he stayed to get his colleague out, and to me that is courage. Just with that, I heard a child moaning or crying, and I remember shouting, "Come back, there's people alive in here." Getting angry. Come back, they're alive. I made my way in. I was terrified of what I would find, and I had not the slightest thought about anything might happen. I eventually found the child's clothes, but there was nothing in it, which was relief. I found the child. I made my way out, and I started to run and shouted with the child, "Come back." And the radio operator came back to meet me. He took the child off me and took off, and I said, "There's people alive in there." I went back in, and I didn't find the lady, she found me, and I got her to the hole, and I didn't take her out. I got behind her and I put my 2 feet in the middle of her back and kicked her out through the hole and sent her on her way. And how, the name of God, she made it, I don't know. I found Woody, and I couldn't get Woody out. Woody wasn't badly marked, Ray Wood. I got the Albert scan on who was incredible. I never thought I'd see him again. Albert was trapped. I then went looking for Jackie Blanchflower, shouting Blanchy, because him and I had played in the same schoolboy team. I made my way around what was left of the part of the wing on the side that Frank had been on, because that had gone. And as I got round what was left, she broke completely on the wing on the trailing edge. Dennis Violet and Bobby Charlton were lying in that order. And Dennis had a terrible, terrible smash behind his right ear, and like the clutch of a car lying beside him. I just grabbed them by the waistband of their trousers, pulled them some yards away and draped them over some wreckage, and then come round and seen a house about 50 yards away. A house, a typical Bavarian European house with a high-pitched roof, and the roof was off it and it was burning. And about 30 yards from that, I saw a compound, a building fenced in, a flat roof building, and a wagon full of barrels against it, and it was going up. I never seen a bomb, I don't want to see one. And the rest of the plane, as if it had been taken by a giant and just driven straight into the centre of the building. It was burning. And the rest of the plane, as if it had been taken by a giant and just driven straight into the centre of the building. It was burning. And the rest of the plane, as if it had been taken by a giant and just driven straight into the centre of the building. It was burning. And the rest of the plane, as if it had been taken by a giant and just driven straight into the centre of the building. It was burning. And the rest of the plane, as if it had been taken by a giant and just driven straight into the centre of the building. It was burning. was exploding. And near the house with the roof off, I found the boss.
The boss was what all the players called Matt Busby.
And he was lying on his elbows. And the strange thing was, he didn't look bad compared to what I'd seen before I got there. And he was rubbing his chest, but he kept saying, my legs, my legs. And I looked down and one of his feet was completely turned the opposite way, but he didn't look bad at all. Not outside anyway. And I propped some brekkies below his back and just, you're okay, boss. And I went another 10, 15 yards and I found Jackie Blanchflower, and Jackie was crying. I broke my back, I can't move. And the snow was melting, and lying across him was Roger Byrne, the captain, and Roger didn't have a mark on him, and his eyes open, was as handsome in death as he was in life. Got talking to Jackie, and he hadn't seen it. I looked down and his right arm was off at the elbow, severed. And I took my tie off. We just kept talking, I suppose, crying, and I tied it around the stump of his arm, and I broke the tie. And I was scrabbling around with my hands, and I sensed something. And I looked up, and that was the first person I'd seen. One of the girls, the stewardesses, was looking down at me. And I said, for God's sake, love, get me something to tie his arms. And she stood there and I said, for Christ's sake, get me something to tie his arms. I tied it with half of my tie. And from across the fields, and I want to stress this, because I've had 40 years of this, from across the fields, from houses came ordinary German people. I mean ordinary people of the streets, of the roads. And some of them looked on in shock. And eventually, a guy turned up in a Volkswagen van. And he opened the side door and he opened the back door. And with the help of some of the ordinary people, we got Jackie Blanchflower into the van. We got the boss into the van. And then another fellow who I didn't know, but he was wearing a United blazer, was little Johnny Berry. I didn't know who he was. I turned around and the biggest shock I got was Bobby Charlton and Dennis Violet were standing looking at the fire. They had come round, and that frightened me. Got them into the van with Billy Folks, and eventually a police car got in front of us and they took us to the hospital. That is how I saw Munich.
1 month later, a memorial match was played at Old Trafford, and Matt Busby, still in hospital in Munich, spoke on the public address system to the crowd, which was welcoming to the ground the German medical team who had treated so many of the wounded.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am speaking from my bed in the Iser Hospital, Munich, where I have been since the tragic accident of just over a month ago. You will be glad, I am sure, to know that the remaining players here and myself are now considered out of danger, and this can be attributed to the wonderful treatment and attention given us by Professor Maurer and his wonderful staff who are with you today as guests of the club. I am obliged to the Empire News for giving me this opportunity to speak to you, for it is only this last 2 or 3 days that I have been able to be told anything about football, and I am delighted to hear of the success and united effort made by all at Old Trafford. Again, it's wonderful to hear that the club have reached the semi-final of the FA Cup, and I enclose my best wishes to everyone. And finally, may I just say, God bless you all.